And hello. This is the second video I'm making this evening. Just finished the one about the Contax T2. Again, excellent camera. This is going to be about another Contax camera. This will be my third Contax camera review. I've already put up one about the Contax 137 M8 Quartz. Actually, I've made two videos about that camera, I believe, at this point. One some time ago when I first bought it a few years ago, and one more recently, I think about 10 months ago. Second Contax camera is the Contax T2, and this is the last in my personal trifecta, and this would be the Contax G1. I have had, in the past, I started with a G1 a while ago, and that caused me, became so infatuated with that, I then went ahead and picked up a Contax G2. Then a while ago, I evidently lost my mind because, well, I know what happened. I bought the Contax T2 and thought, oh, I have the Contax T2 now, so I don't need the G1 or the G2 anymore. That was a mistake. After a while, I did miss this camera, so I went ahead and purchased it again. Luckily, I bought the G1 before the prices started climbing up a little. The G2 have gone. I would not repurchase again. Similar to what I said about the T2. The G2 I bought at hundreds of dollars less than the current going rate. I would not pay the current going rate for a Contax G2. That's just personal preference. Why? Mainly because the G1 exists. It's that simple. I have had both, have had them both at the same time, have used them with the same lenses back to back, and I personally do not see as large of a difference in the autofocus as some would point out. And number two, I actually appreciate the slightly smaller size and the slightly smaller weight. I also do appreciate, oddly, instead of a lot of people like the focus dial on the front of the G2, I prefer, perhaps because I'm used to the T2, I actually prefer the G1's dial with the distance indicator on it for manual focus, and it, again, all three have focus confirmation in the viewfinder, which is nice. Also, this camera here, favored, well, I compared it to the Konica, trying to remember the name of it. I'll post the comparison. But an all-in-one Konica camera that gets a lot, the Konica Hexar AF, there it is. It compared favorably to that. I did have that camera for a little while. Had is strong. I tried out a model from a local camera shop, did not end up buying. Found one at a decent rate from an online retailer. Unfortunately, it did not work. It was broken. The fairly common malady, I understand. Basically the shutter switch didn't work. When you hit it, you didn't know what would happen. Nothing could happen. It would focus and work properly, or it would reacquire focus. Say if you're trying to focus and then recompose, and it would refocus again so that you have it shut off. So basically I had to send that back. And after that, I kind of lost interest in it. And the fact that I already had the G1, which, using them side by side, I actually preferred the G1 all in. And again, there's another review. I'll put that in the comments. I compared those two cameras. But again, if I did not have a T2 already, this camera would do it for me as far as my Contax fix. This is an excellent camera. Again, I'll post a link to sample images in the gallery, a sample gallery below. But yeah, that's about it. I mean, what more could you want? I mean, this one goes up to 1/2000th. One could say that's superior to the T2. This one has very good focus, manual focus. But why would you buy this camera for that? I hear people quibble about the manual focus and how it's not like a rangefinder. I mean, but yeah, you wouldn't buy this camera for I would not buy this camera for manual focus. I would go ahead and buy, and there are plenty of other cameras I'd buy before that. It has nice features like the Contax 137 M8 Quartz. I like the shutter switch. It has on, and then one more detent, just like the M8 Quartz, that is an exposure lock. So basically, it is a nice, simple way to separate focus lock and exposure lock. So basically, you focus and recompose, or you can get the exposure where you want to, say a background, and then lock it and then bring it back and take a picture. Or you can, if it's a dim setting and there's a bright background, you can expose lower in the frame to make sure you get the exposure you want, and then bring it up and expose properly. Just a really nice camera. And also the lenses are affordable. The 45 is climbing in price a little, but this 28mm f2.8, which is oddly my favorite lens, And here's the strange thing. If you had to ask me what was the best lens optically as far as performance, purely, I would say the 45 f2. But I actually prefer this 28 millimeter on this camera for some reason. I have more keepers. I use this lens more often, and that's not normal for me because I usually like a 45-50 ish focal range or focal equivalency. Okay, well, full frame, so this is a true 28 millimeter. But yeah, I mean, that is it. I mean, great camera. I highly recommend one. I would also recommend one before because it doesn't look like the prices have increased. There's a massive gap between the G1 and G2 right now, price-wise. But for me personally, and against I did a comparison for those two cameras also between the G1 and the G2. And is the G2 a better camera? Technically, yes, of course. It has faster shutter speed, better autofocus system. Is it worth hundreds of dollars more as the price difference is now? In my opinion, no. I think you do just fine with the G1. I have bought the G1 back and I've not had an issue. Another perk of the Contax G range is this lens. This is the 90mm f2.8. You know, it does. I've seen people give it some flack for its autofocus. I don't have an issue with it. Again, I'll link a photo sample for this, specifically this lens. And it works just fine. Another thing nice is I've actually bought an adapter, and I'll put a review on that also below. I've used this on my Sony A system, full frame, with no issues. It's a focus adapter that basically mimics the manual autofocus motor on a G1, so it has a focus dial on it, and that works very well, and I like that also. So it's nice. Just like other glass, you can adapt this to digital as well. And that's about it. Most of the information I said, I glossed over it, but most will be provided in the links below in the comment section. Thank you very much.